If you stand here, perhaps each one of you should have the chance to stand here for a couple of minutes. And you see the crowd, the brain power in this room, the type of banks, the captains of industry, then you are happy that the future for Ghana is bright. Anytime you get banks involved in promoting anything, then one thing you are sure is that one, they are beneficiaries finally, and two, that whatever they are promoting is good. I look at the list there and found out that 5 banks are involved in this promotion, and that gladdens my heart. Barclays, GCB, ADB, Zenith Bank, and UMB. Give a clap for the banks. It is important for the banks to get involved because at the end of the day, when the economy goes well, they are the final beneficiaries. Am I right? And Barclays has served us for 100 years. And I want to tell Barclays that Ghana has also helped Barclays globally to improve on their balance sheet. Sponsors of this rather important program, colleague ministers, former and present, captains of industry, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure to be part of the Ghana Economic Forum, building a Ghanaian-owned economy 60 years after independence. If we were to borrow Uncle Danlate's vocabulary, we say domesticating the Ghanaian economy, isn't it? 60 years on. It's time we domesticated the Ghanaian economy, meaning Ghanaians playing a very key role. We alone cannot make it, and no country alone builds its economy. You need other helping hands, but you must play the lead role. It is not right for others to play the lead role when you play a secondary role. Ghana must play a lead role. And this means that our laws must support the private sector. Our laws should give advantage to the private sector. Our laws should, together with the captains of the industry, make sure that the Ghanaian is on the wheel, is on the steering wheel, directing the economy. We have to be thinking along these lines. Ghana has been undergoing restructuring for quite some time with the support of the World Bank, IMF, African Development, etc. So we have a special ministry for it, special secretariat. The whole restructuring mechanism has been put under the office of the senior minister. And my first reaction was to invite GEMPA, the business school in Legon, AGI, Chamber of Commerce, and all those key players in the economy, and all the top public and civil servants, and give them a simple message that my idea about the restructuring of the economy should bear one factor, that the public sector, both civil and public sector, should work in the interest of the private sector for the economy to grow and become prosperous. You should tune your mind to assist the private sector to make the money. But that is the only way we can grow this economy. Today, under our program, with the IMF, the public sector is full in terms of employment. We can't employ anybody in the public sector. It is full. And indeed, it is full. Perhaps we may have to even lay some off. But let's assume it's full. If it is full, and in 2005, when I was Minister of Education, we had 8 private investors. 8 private, total investors, sorry, not private, 6 public and 2 private, making a total of 8 in 2005. Today, as I speak, you are aware that polytechnics have been converted, most of them into universities, etc., etc. We have about 20 universities in the public sector and about 75 universities in the private sector. So ask yourself, where will the products of this almost 100 universities be working? They only find job if the private sector grows, if the private sector expands, if the private sector becomes prosperous. And if we do not get our mindset in this direction, we are heading for trouble as a country. Most of those coming out of our universities are not technical based, are not engineering. Most of them are in the humanities, the graduates. Because when you open universities in the private sector, as at least we have done, and I'm happy we've done it, it is not that easy for the private sector to put up a very credible technical university. It's very expensive to have an engineering school owned by the private sector. So most of the private sector will go in for training of marketing, sociology, economics, mathematics, those subjects which are easily taught without expensive laboratories and workshops. So we have a problem. And we need the captains of industry here cooperating with the government to get the problem resolved. The problem is solvable. If our economy were to go on a tangent like the German economy has gone, then the public sector will not be the place to look for a job. You finish the university, you are looking for a job in the private sector. Or by virtue of the type of training you have, you are employing yourself. This is how I think we should all see the development of this nation of ours. And I'm charging the captains of industry, collaborating with the banks. That's why I'm very happy that the banks have seen the need and have come strongly in sponsoring this. Let's give another clap for the banks. Once the banks get involved, generally we are heading in the right direction. The banks have the right nose to smell money. And when they smell it, it means they are going to make it. And therefore, the fact that they are involved means they see the policies of government right. This government has decided to focus on 4 major sectors. These sectors are, and you need this, as my vice president was enumerating, the vice president is in Iran at the moment, representing the president in the inauguration of their new government. First of all, we must have microeconomic stability. That is number one. If you're able to create that environment, that itself is attractive to the private sector. They want to make money, but they want to make money that protects itself. So the currency must be strong. Inflation must be slow. The growth must be high. All the economic indicators must point in the right direction. And therefore, the managers of the economy must have at the back of their mind microeconomic stability and debt sustainability. Debt sustainability because this government inherited a debt to GDP ratio of 7 to 3.1. You're going nowhere with that kind of debt to GDP ratio. The threshold is 70. And when you go beyond 70, you are classified as heavily indebted country. No more poor, because Ghana's per capita is over $400. And it's only when your per capita is less than 400 that you can go HIPIC. Ghana cannot go HIPIC any longer. We are a lower middle income country. So we are now joining the league of heavily indebted countries. And when you are in that league, it's more difficult for you. It's more difficult for you because when you are heavily indebted and poor, you have people canceling the debt for you. That is the rule of the game. Once I'm HIPIC, I'm entitled to, by the Cologne Convention, debt forgiveness. But if you are not HIPIC, but you are heavily indebted, then you must grow your economy to pay your debt. And that is therefore more difficult. So the government situation today is far more difficult than it was in 2001. At the stroke of a pen, about $6 billion were written off our debt. So we're comfortable from that angle. The World Bank, therefore, cannot understand why Ghana should get into this situation now. When we were in Washington in April, and we're trying to get some special support, the president of the World Bank said, there is a new phenomenon in the developing world led by Ghana in what we call reversibility of the economy or irreversibility of the economy. That you can grow to the level of 14% or 9.3% without oil. Without oil, your GDP is 9.3%. You have oil, then you come to 3.5. That creates a problem for people to understand. But we are there, and we should manage it being there. And one thing I'm sure is that the problem is solvable if you discipline the system. And we are certainly going to discipline the system. When you are in this situation, you must cut your coat according to your size. In the mid-year review, you saw the Minister of Finance cutting certain expenditure items, both capital and non-capital items. And people were asking the question, why not? Because we did not meet our revenue target. If you target for revenue 100 and you make 90, then you should not go and spend 100. That is indiscipline. Run the economy just like running a home. You must run the home based on the inflow, cash-wise, of the home. So the government has to cut certain expenditures to ensure that we are within the revenue level. So if you have one problem in this country, it is the revenue. We must make sure that all leakages, and the banks should help us, captains of industry should help us, so that we get what is due government to ensure that the economy grows. The direct factor of development is generation of revenue. Ghana haven't passed the poverty level. We're not going to get a lot of grants as we used to get. We can't get the grants the way we got. Based on certain programs, we will get support from our development partners. But it cannot be a main source of inflow as it used to be when we were considered poor. So please, we need this. The second point is infrastructure development. And here, power becomes perhaps the most critical of the infrastructure development. You cannot run an economy without adequate source of power. The economy's blood flow is power. Every other thing depends on power. Dunzo, perhaps, was the main source of the destruction of this economy. For 4 years of Dunzo created a problem for industry, agriculture, and the economy as a whole. We should now be sure that we have enough energy. And we are planning not only to have enough, but to have excess, so that in the event of certain problems, industry, agriculture will never run short of energy. Luckily, Ghana has a lot of gas deposit. And when you are blessed with gas, then you are halfway the solution to your energy. Therefore, we're now going to go and make sure that thermal provides support for hydro. We're still, of course, going to promote the renewable energy sources as well. But we are determined as a second pillar to look at infrastructure, specifically energy. Accelerated industrial development. And that accelerated industrial development should also spread in the sense of bringing on board development at the district levels. It's very important. We cannot just concentrate all your industrial programs in the cities. Hence, one district, one factory. That concept is decentralizing development. One village, one dam, decentralizing development. It is important, and we are going to go that way. It will take you some time to cover every district, but we will be there. The fourth point is agricultural transformation. People have never understood why Ghana, with the quality of land we have, should be a net importer of food. Governments, including our own, talked about being self-sufficient in rice, and we couldn't make it. And I don't understand why we can't make it. There should be a total effort to make it. 60% of your land is arable. The rivers in Ghana, by the grace of God, run uniformly through the country. On your left, you have this big Ankobra and the rest. In the center, you have Volta running, having from plains, huge fertile land. You have Birim, you have Pra. Rivers run in their red directions to make irrigation easy. So do we have any reason to be importing vegetables? To be importing flowers? I don't think we have. And we can't defend it to the future generation. So captains of industry, let's think it through. Whatever push you can give to the government to think right, we should. The government should think right to resolve the agricultural transformation. Because this is a gift from God, and God will blame all of us if we continue to import food to feed ourselves. These four thematic areas should be able to change the complete face of our economy. And I think with your support, captains of industry, the banks, we should be able to do this. I'm looking around, I'm very happy with the faces I'm seeing. We should be able to accomplish this as a cooperative effort for the sake of Ghana. Let us think about future generations. This generation should lay forever a foundation that will make Ghana the center of industry in West Africa. I was talking to the pharmacists in Kumasi over the weekend, and I told them a true story. At the ECOWAS Finance Ministers meeting in 2003 in Abuja, a colleague, Minister of Finance, called her ADC to buy her a drug. She was coughing or something. And when he whispered, I heard Ghana. So I asked her, did you say Ghana? He said, yes, I did. I told him to make sure that he buys made in Ghana cough mixture. He buys made in Ghana cough mixture. We were in Abuja, Nigeria. It wasn't me, so the speaker wasn't a Ghanaian. And then the Liberian Minister of Finance also said, well, in Liberia, if you want to avoid fake drugs, then you buy made in Ghana. So there is that confidence built on our production capacity. There is that confidence built on made in Ghana goods. within the ECOWAS, a population of 350 million. What are we doing to domesticate that market, domesticate that production? Our location, even in West Africa, is very central. All this should speak to us, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let us resolve to get the economy resolved once and for all. Let us remove this tag of irreversibility on our head, that Ghana will do well for some time, and then later we reverse to the bottom, and then we climb again to the top. That cannot do. Once we set on motion and moving, we should make it impossible for any government to reverse a motion. And therefore, certain laws should even be looked at as part of managing the economy. That's why we are looking at the fiscal responsibility law. So you can't come and run the deficit anyhow. There should be a law restricting you between a band. We are looking at 3.5 to 5% deficit annual. So the Minister of Finance will be responsible. And people should suffer for breaking such economic rules. We have the Bank of Ghana Act, which says that the government should not spend more than 10% in excess of the previous year's revenue. This is a law in Ghana. That's the Banking Act. The government spends 42% above the previous year's revenue, and nothing happens. The governor continues to hold his job. You go to Argentina, you will leave immediately. Because we can't have the law there, which restricts you to control expenditure. You do it anyhow, push the whole country into a mess, and enjoy your position as governor. It's high time we look at some of these things and make sure that people who break our own agreed laws suffer for it. Distinguished captains of industry, distinguished banks, we are in difficulty, but we can easily overcome. A forum of this type is very important because it allows us to think outside the box, to discuss problems among ourselves, to support each other, to ensure that Ghana gets on the development path now and forever. Thank you very much.